Are you just starting out in your real estate investing journey and want to know more about flipping homes? Well, listen up as I will go through the step-by-step process of how to flip a home from prospecting and acquisition all the way to disposition and closeout. Hi, what's up guys? My name is Renovating and I'm a realtor with eXp Realty. In my last video, I talked about the 7 different ways of how you can make money and invest in the Canadian real estate market. In this video, let's focus on one of those ways, which is how to flip a home. Now, before I get into the value, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We are all here to help each other out, so any support would be greatly appreciated. Now, let's get straight into the value. So I will be breaking down the process into 4 main stages. Stage number 1 is going to be your marketing and acquisition. Stage number 2 is going to be your financing solutions. Stage number 3 is going to be renovating strategies, and 4 is going to be your disposition and closeout. So under the first stage of marketing and acquisition, step 1 is to market for leads, and we can both do this through online and offline means. Online through MLS, Kijiji, Facebook, Craigslist, and offline through direct mail campaigns, door knocking, cold calling, driving for dollars when you literally drive around the neighborhood, look for properties that can be potentially flipped. You can also do bench advertising or bandit signs. Now, mind you, word of caution, these things can be time consuming and expensive, so make sure that you build out the system and outsource if possible. Now, you may have heard the term wholesaling or bird dogging. So in wholesaling, a wholesaler gets a property under contract, finds a buyer for that property, and sells it at a higher price. And whatever the price difference is, then you pocket that as your profit. For example, I approach a seller, I tell him or her that we can sell this for at least $450. I then look for a buyer and sells it to that buyer for $460. Now that $10,000 is going to be your profit that you can pocket. So wholesalers typically target distressed properties that they can sell to investors who are willing to take on the renovations. Now, bird dogging is when a person looks and sources for potential properties that has a high upside potential. So the term bird dog is a reference from hunting dogs that looks for birds that are shot by hunters. Now, the main difference between a bird dog and a wholesaler is that bird dogs are the one who looks for distressed properties, while a wholesaler pretty much facilitates the whole transaction. So now that you've finished marketing for leads, it's time to evaluate those leads. So what you now do is you physically check the property, check for the condition of the property, take note if there are any repairs that are required, and you can come up with estimated repair cost. This is when you have to run your numbers. So what does it mean by running your numbers? What you need really is your MAO, or your maximum allowable offer, your ARV, or the after repair value, and the repair cost, which is going to be the cost that you need to put in so that you can bring that property in par with its peers or to the comparable properties that you want to sell it for. Now take note, you make your money when you buy and not when you sell. That's why it's very important to make sure that when you make an offer, you don't overpay, because most oftentimes a lot of investors overpay on the property and underestimate the amount of repairs that they need to do to bring that property up to par with its comparables. So the formula that a lot of investors use when determining the maximum allowable offer when you try to purchase a property is ARV, after repair value, multiplied by 0.8, and then deduct it by the cost of repairs or renovation. For example, if you determine that the ARV is $1 million, and the cost to renovate that particular property is $100,000, your maximum allowable offer will be as follows. $1 million times 0.8 gives you $800,000 minus $100,000, which is going to be the cost of renovation, equals $700,000. That means when you make an offer to that particular property of interest, your maximum allowable offer will be $700,000. Not anything more than that. Not a dollar more, just up to $700,000. So you may be asking why the formula calls for 80% of the ARV. That's because that 20% buffer is meant towards, your realtor fees, lawyer fees, holding costs, and whatever is really remaining from that 20% is going to be your profit. Now, if you are a new investor and you want to be conservative, you can maybe probably use 70% instead of 80% of the ARV when calculating for your MAO. I cannot stress the importance of not bending your numbers for you to acquire that property. So now that you've finished marketing for leads, evaluating those leads, we are now ready to place an offer. So how do you protect yourself when placing an offer? I always suggest to have conditions such as finance condition and home inspection conditions, so that you will have a way out in case your finance falls through or there's something wrong with the property when the home inspector comes in and checks it out. So it's very important for you to place those conditions and not give a firm offer. I would also typically include at least 3 visits, and you need to have multiple exit strategies. And if you can, put it under your corporation, if you have a corporation. It's very important for you to know what your different exit strategies are, so that in the event that, let's say the market turns and the flip doesn't work, you can, still rent it out to either long-term tenant or short-term rentals. Now, during negotiations, try not to give them your maximum number. Always give them a little bit less so that you have room to negotiate. For example, if the property, or if they're asking for $1 million, you would probably put, $930 first and then try to meet somewhere in the middle. So that way you're not overpaying. And be ready to walk away and not let your emotions take over you. I actually had this deal not too long ago wherein the negotiations took days, back and forth, until we were able to secure the property and meet in the middle with the seller. Once you put the property under contract, then you can secure financing, arrange for home inspection, and once those 2 conditions have been met, then you can lift the conditions and have a firm deal. Once the deal is firm, try to get property insurance right away and set up the utilities before closing. So moving on to the second stage is your financing solutions. Now you may be asking, how the hell do I raise capital for me to buy and purchase this property? Now there's several different ways of how you can do so. Number 1 is through your conventional or traditional A lenders, and these are your federally regulated banks that typically lend to prime borrowers that has a good credit score, good credit history, good income, and low debt ratio. So these are your top 5 banks, namely RBC, CIBC, TD, BMO, and Scotia Bank. The pros of using your traditional conventional A lenders is that they offer you the best interest rates. Now, the caveat of that is that the borrower needs to have pristine financial health, not a lot of debt, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and you can probably have a large prepayment penalty. Another method is going to your B lenders. And B lenders are not federally regulated, however, they indirectly follow regulations due to the nature of their business. A few examples of B lenders are your MCAP or MCAP and First National. Now, B lenders typically offer higher rates than your typical A lenders. However, they are more flexible in terms of looking at the borrower's financial health. So if you are a borrower and you were not approved through the A lenders, then you can then approach your B lenders. You just have to pay a little bit of a premium. The next method is going through private money or hard money. They typically have very high rates and steep administration costs. Now, the good thing about private lending is that, they are good for short-term lending. There's less documents required. The process of applying for private lending is far less stringent than when you apply for a loan from a B lender or an A lender, but of course you have to pay a premium for that. Moving on, the next method is through angel investors, and these angel investors are your family and friends, co-workers, who are willing to lend their money at a very good rate, or sometimes for free. That's why they're called angel investors, because they're so angelic, right? The good thing about this is that you don't have to pay very high interest, and these are good for short-term loans. However, the amount of money that you can borrow from your angel investors typically are limited, and it's very difficult to find large amounts of money from your angel investors. Next method is tapping onto your HELOC or LOC. HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit, and LOC stands for just Line of Credit. Now, the difficult thing about HELOCs is that you need to have an asset to secure the loan, and there is a limit of how much you can borrow from your HELOC. So the next method is JV partnerships. And JV partnership is a temporary partnership between two or more parties who gain mutual benefits by sharing costs, rewards, and risks. Now, the negative thing about JV partnership is that you don't have full control of everything. You need to have a consensus amongst the groups who are in that partnership before you can actually move forward with a decision. There's always potential for conflict, and you can lose full control of the project. So now that we've secured financing, and that's been dealt and settled with, let's move on to stage 3, which is renovating strategies. Now, when you renovate, you typically have to have a timeline from day 1 of acquisition all the way to the last day of disposition and closeout. So renovation typically lasts at least 3 to 4 months of renovation, 30 to 60 days of disposition, which includes cleaning the property, staging, photos, videos, and actually listing it. After you list it and you were able to sell it, then you add another 30 to 60 days for a closeout or for the closing period. Now, when you are going through a renovation, you need to have a renovation contract, and within that renovation contract, you need to have a scope of work. And scope of work is arguably the most important part of your renovation contract. So your scope of work typically outlines what work is required, who is responsible for those tasks, what is the project schedule, and what are the other details that is required for your contractors and subcontractors. Now, your scope of work is not set in stone, and it can be changed through change order or partial termination. When writing your scope of work, you need to be very specific and detailed. So your scope of work includes project overview, milestone and deliverables, scope and technical details, schedule and timeline, and management and administration. There are different types of scope of work depending on which trade you're dealing with. There's different scope of work for electricians, carpenters, plumbers, but typically when you hire a general contractor, he will take care of all those trades and have them as subcontractors, so you would only have one scope of work dedicated to your general contractor. Now, when you are in the process of choosing your specification, typically you should have 3 to 5 templates that you can provide to your contractor that they can choose. So when you're choosing your specs or specifications, you should typically offer at least 3 to 5 spec templates to your contractor that they can work with, similar to a builder. Now, having a spec template makes everything easier on all parties. It reduces costs through bulk buying, there is no guesswork, less time is required, and it's very beautiful to the end users. So a tip for you guys is go to a presentation center, take a photo of their design templates, because the builders have already spent money hiring interior designers to produce that design template. So why invent the wheel when you can just copy somebody else's? Now, when you are looking for contractors, you need to make sure that you vet for that contractor, do your due diligence. You can seek contractors through referrals. Referrals are a big thing, and ask for projects that they've finished and interview those previous clients and ask for their experience with that contractor. Those good ones typically are very busy. You have to book them really far ahead, and they're always at your local hardware stores early in the morning or late at night. And you can even ask those local hardware store associates to see if they know somebody who's a contractor and whom they know produces good work. Now, when you are interviewing contractors, make sure that you line them up, have at least 3 to 5 contractors visit your property, ask for a quote or an estimate, meet them, and give them your SOW, or your scope of work. So now that you've received all the quotes, make sure that you compare them, see if the quotes that they provided you are actually itemized. Some of the red flags that you can look for are, if the quotes are very cheap from the rest of the quotes, you would probably get charged after they've already secured the contract through add-ons, and you wouldn't want to have those surprise costs pop up. That's why it's important to know your costs right off the bat in the beginning of the project. Another red flag is when the quote that they provided you is not detailed, or they're asking for too much money right up front. So after deciding which contractor you're gonna pick, negotiate the price, agree on the terms, and sign the contract. Now, when you watch home shows like HDTV, they portray that renovation is like fun, stress-free, you know, it's you know, you just like demolish walls and you pick supplies and, you know, the finishes. But in reality, it's one of the most stressful phase of buying or flipping a home. So how do you avoid you know, the stress, and you know, how do you avoid disputes between you and your contractor? You need to make sure that your scope of work is very detailed, because that written document is where you would always refer to whenever you and your contractor does not agree on something. So it's also important to have a lien waiver, and what it is really is a document that proves that I, as a homeowner, paid the contractor everything that is due, and if ever let's say the contractor does not pay the subcontractors won't be able to legally put a lien on my property. When hiring contractors, make sure that you hire contractors that have a business insurance that covers the property and workers' compensation insurance that covers the people, so that if anything happens, you as a homeowner are not liable. So let's say someone smokes in the unit or in your property, a carpenter for example, and burns the house down, and the contractor did not have any business insurance, then the liability now falls onto you as a homeowner, and you can be liable paying the cost of the damages. So now that once the renovations are done, then we can proceed to the last stage, which is your disposition and closeout. This stage involves cleaning the unit, staging the property, taking photos and videos, and listing it to the market. And hopefully you could market the property and sell it at the highest possible price at the shortest amount of time. So in recap, some of the keys when flipping a home is you have to make sure that the numbers work. Do not bend the numbers. You need to find a solid and reliable contractor. Most of the time you can get, you know, a reliable contractor, but they're quite expensive, or you can get those cheap contractors, but they're very unreliable. It's very difficult to find that contractor who's in the middle that is both cost efficient and reliable as well. So if you find one, let me know, and I would be more than happy to work with those contractors. Another key to a successful flip is making sure that you have a good project management, making sure that the project comes along in a very timely manner without any delays, and by also having proper planning and implementation. Word of advice, please make sure that when you analyze a deal, you don't overestimate the value of the ARV or the after repair value, and you don't underestimate the costs of renovation. That's why you need to work with conservative numbers and have that buffer that will ensure that you are protected when you buy the property. You make your money when you buy and not when you sell. And there you have it, folks. I hope you learned a lot from this video. Please comment, like, and subscribe. That would mean the world to me. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.